Asia is a continent full of opportunities. Stock markets in emerging Asian countries are popping up with new listings, but there's one thing that most Western investors are missing, and I'm going to tell you what it is today. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And I want to talk about investing in Asia. It's something that I've been doing for a long time on some scale. I believe, even going back 15 years, I've been investing in markets in Asia, particularly emerging markets, because I believe those markets are the future. And if you look at countries, including the market we've often talked about, such as Cambodia, you can look at how emerging and frontier economies often skip some of the same business cycles, some of the same recessions that Western markets do. Cambodia, for example, really hasn't seen a recession in about 30 years. And so if you're investing there, what I've seen is kind of this continual growth. Now, it's one thing to buy property, which can increasingly be difficult in some Asian countries. Some of them, like Vietnam, are slowly opening up. Some of them, like Indonesia, are imposing new restrictions. Asia is a continent where it is somewhat difficult. In fact, we've talked before about the 4 Asian countries where you can buy land. Buying property is somewhat restrictive. What can you do to get around this? Well, you've got things like REITs, real estate investment trusts. You've got Asian investment funds. You've got Asian stocks you can buy directly. You can do that through a private or a priority banking relationship in an Asian market. Generally, you would do that in Singapore. Potentially, if you have some exposure to Hong Kong, you could do it there. Those are places where they have a sophisticated number of investments. They're going to be generally tax advantaged. They're going to be done properly so that you don't incur any unnecessary obligations. But what if you don't have a bank account in Singapore or in Hong Kong? What a lot of people do is they go and they simply set up a U.S. brokerage account if they live in the U.S. Or if you live in Canada, you do that in Canada. And they'll buy into generally a U.S.-listed exchange-traded fund or ETF, or they'll buy some kind of ADR at a U.S. stock exchange. And they'll think, hey, I have exposure to China. I have exposure to Asia. After all, you have ETFs. You have the Thailand fund. You have the Vietnam fund. Certainly, these have relatively low fees. Commissions in the United States with brokerages are coming down, often to zero, and so you can gain exposure. But one of the things that I've seen as I've traveled around Asia is some of the best opportunities. And I've talked to folks around Asia. I've talked to presidents of banks. I've talked to entrepreneurs. I've talked to guys doing investments. Is I've seen that some of the best opportunities are very hard to access. Again, China, not so much. But as you see people who have been moving out of China, where do you go? I'm fascinated by up-and-coming economies. Now, I think Central Asia is a place that is slowly emerging and is worth taking a look at, Uzbekistan in particular. Mongolia, less so. I think that was a darling maybe about 10 years ago. I think it's maybe not as intriguing now. Myanmar, probably off the table for a while. But you see markets like Vietnam that are slowly opening up. Again, Cambodia is a favorite of mine. You see some of these markets. Malaysia perhaps has some opportunities if you want more developed, but not at the level of Singapore. Singapore, of course, has lots of stuff. You can buy into REITs in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in North Asia, of course in Japan. If you want the most emerging economies, you're going to want some kind of Asian brokerage account. And so if you look at, let's say, at Interactive Brokers, they'll have, I think they have India and South Korea and a couple of other Asian markets, Singapore. I think Fidelity and Schwab have like Hong Kong and Japan. But when you compare the access you get from brokerages like these in the US and in Europe, in all the markets they have there, you're not really getting nearly as much. And so if you look at an Asian-focused brokerage account, something that's based in Singapore or based in Hong Kong, it could be through a bank, it could not be, that's going to generally give you access to more markets. For example, I have a premium banking relationship where I get access to about 7 different Asian markets to buy direct stocks. They also have various funds of things. I can buy into certain debt products if I wanted to. So it's not maybe quite as much as a full brokerage, but you can get a good taste of that. And again, it's set up in a way that's designed for folks who, for example, aren't in the US. One thing I think people who aren't US taxpayers don't consider is if you buy ETFs, there may be future tax consequences from that. And there could be current tax consequences in some cases, but many people are not protected from possible future US tax consequences when buying US investment products. So when you go to Asia, obviously you avoid some of those issues because you're not the US. But finding an Asian brokerage account, again, it could be a bank's trading platform. There is an advent of robos, although a lot of the robo advisors in Asia are focusing largely on US stocks. You're not going to get the exposure there. So private banking, Asian brokerage accounts, you're going to open up a lot more markets. You're going to find a lot more opportunities. And as I had a gentleman who I was working with, this is a gentleman who is a mid-9-figure entrepreneur. He said, when you have a high-level brokerage or a high-level banking relationship on a continent like Asia, they're going to know the deals. They're going to know the stuff that doesn't get put into an ETF. They're going to get the stuff that perhaps is less liquid, but is a lot faster growing. And so for me, when you look at a lot of these markets, there are barriers to entry. If you want to invest in Asia, you want to actually be on the Asian continent. There are brokerage accounts in Hong Kong, for example, that will open accounts for Americans. They are not against taking on Americans. A lot of the banks may accept accounts for Americans, such as in Singapore, but they won't let you invest. And so being an American is a disadvantage there. There are increasingly a number of, kind of East-West, U.S./Asian wealth advisors who have offices in Hong Kong or Singapore and who have people there who, if you just want to open up a portfolio with them as your financial advisor, they'll do the work for you through the Asian brokerage account. And so my suggestion to anyone who wants to invest, get away from the Western products. You can only go so far with those. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving you financial advice. But trading an ETF is going to give you a different experience than going and have access to an entire stock market in emerging and frontier economies, than going and having access to certain REITs or certain products which may not be listed in the West or may not be even available in the West. And so on the ground is always best. Obviously, I've spent years of mine on the ground, including a lot of time in Asia, finding opportunities that aren't widely available, that aren't widely known. You don't have to move there, but setting up that local account, I think, will make your life a lot easier. It will give you a lot more access. Again, it could be better for your tax planning. You don't have to pay more than what you need to. That's my advice for investing in Asia. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.